bear rest there. Good morning. So before we start with the talk, today is the second Sunday of Advent. I wanted to honor that. Diana had a beautiful reading last week that talked about Advent as a time of waiting and preparation. It's a time of contemplation of what is past and what is to come. And during Advent, we make use of the wreath and the 4 candles. We light one candle for each of the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. And I look at Christmas as a time of remembering the birth of light, which happened not 2,000 years ago, but happens within us. It actually happens daily. And when we think about the birth of light, we oftentimes need to prepare, right? We need to kind of take a little step back from our daily life of busyness and take a little bit of remembrance time. So to me, the Advent wreath, which actually predates the Christian era, is a beautiful time of remembering that. And so last week we honored the idea of reflection. And out of reflection comes hope. When we begin to think about the contemplation of light, you know, right now we're getting into the darkest period, right? I just heard a few people talk about it. It gets so dark so early, and it seems so dark and dreary, you know. And we talk about the darkness that's in our physical environment right now in this particular season. But we know somewhere in the back of our minds there's a spring coming, right? We know that the light starts to come back. And so we have that essence, that awareness of that hope. And so that hope stays alive within us. And then today on the second Sunday of Advent, from that hope we generate the sense of love. Because we love the light. And we love the period of waiting. We love the period of darkness. We love the period of arriving at that. And that light, again, is within each of us. And so we hold that in love. We hold that light within us in love. So I invite you this week to remember that as you do this, that we start to allow the love to expand in our lives, if you'll join me with that. So our talk today is the living spirit. The living spirit, which takes Ernest Holmes' idea of the very first step of what we believe. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty. And I want to start with a quote from our wonderful mouthful Matilda of Magdeburg. Damien, can you say it 5 times real fast with me? And she says, "The day of my spiritual awakening was the day I saw and knew I saw all things in God and God in all things." All things in God and God in all things. And that's our invitation today and every day, to see God in all things and all things in God. See, God is alive. God isn't something that some creative essence that kind of created the earth and the planets and the universe and set it all into motion and then sat up on a throne somewhere, right? God is vibrantly alive right here, right now. And so it's alive as you and as me. You and I are the life of God living and figuring out how to live, right? And sometimes that goes well and sometimes it's a little challenging, the figuring out part of how to live, right? But we are that. Kabir, who was an Indian mystic and poet, who started off as an Indian Muslim and was later on very influenced by the Hindu mythology and is honored in both traditions, says in his ecstatic poetry, "O servant, where do you seek me? Lo, I am beside you. I am neither in temple nor mosque. I am neither in Kaaba or in Kailash. Neither am I in rites and ceremonies, nor in yoga or renunciation. If you are a true seeker, you shall at once see me. You shall meet me in a moment of time. I am the breath of all breath." Contemplate that for a moment. Take a breath. It's God's breath. The breath you and I are breathing is God breathing the breath of God as God. You and I are that. Kaaba in the Muslim tradition is the sacred black stone that's in the large cube in Mecca that every Muslim is charged with making a pilgrimage, the Hajj, to at least once in their life. That's the one where you oftentimes, if you've seen pictures of a million or so Muslims walking around this large cube, the black stone Kaaba is there. Kailash is a mountain that's on the Indian-Tibetan border, and it was thought to be the home of Shiva. And so what he's saying is that God isn't in any of these places any more than it is anywhere else. It's not specially in the mosque or the temple. It's not specially in any of these sacred sites. It's not in the processes or the rites, the ceremonies or the yogas or the renunciations. It's not that we have to do any of that to find God. God is right here, right now. And we may experience that in some of those sacred sites because we're more open to it there. We may experience it in some of those processes because they support us in becoming more open to what is. But the infinite is right here, right now. If I could provide everybody with a little mirror, you could hold the mirror up and look and say, this is the face of God. God's right here. You can look in your face of God neighbor and remember that you are God and I am God. God is breathing as you and me. And so all spiritual teachers tell us some variation of what Jesus said when he said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, which is, its righteousness is its way, its manner. See, I oftentimes want to do life my way, right? And I bet you there's probably one other person in the congregation here who sometimes wants to do life their way. But what I have to learn is I have to do life God's way. God's way. And I have to bring myself into more and more alignment with what is God's way. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Go to that place within. Since God is living within us and as us, our only work, our only real work, is to remember that and to become ever more aware of that. It's all we ever need to do. Because as we do it, we become open to what Ernest Holmes calls our first cause. We talk here about the law a lot, and the law is the law of cause and effect. And we can sometimes forget about the fact that the effects are just that. They're effects. They're something we put into place. And so into this cause, into this field of infinite potentiality, infinite possibility, we float thoughts, right? And once in a while, if you're like me, we hammer thoughts, and we, jackhammer thoughts, and we force them in, But we think thoughts, we put them into this field. We as it said, make an impress on the infinite. And an impress, if you can think of it as, Play-Doh that you put your hand into, it's going to leave a print of your hand in the Play-Doh, right? And so the universe is the same way. Whatever we impress upon the universe, it shows up as that. And so Ernest talks about that first cause. And that first cause is where we are creating everything else. And so we have to primarily listen to and become aware of that first cause, the nature of that cause, which is love, which is peace, which is harmony. And to start to listen to that cause. Our thoughts activate the source. It stays there in potential until we put a thought in that activates it. Do we put a thought in that's in alignment with its true nature and then creates and replicates more and more and more of that? Or do we put in thoughts so sometimes we forget, and our thoughts that are based on the effects that we've already created in our lives, both individually and collectively? See, we live in a world that's had a history of not always remembering the truth, the highest and greatest good of God, right? Have you noticed? We're kind of born into this world, okay? And so we get taught and early on stuff like lack and limitation and yes and no and all that stuff. And so we get caught up in that and we act from that, and then we start creating effects from that because we're always creating in cause. We're always creating with our thoughts. If we start acting in response to the effects, it's sort of like being in one of those houses of mirrors where everything is kind of feeding back on itself and you're trying to make something. I don't know if house of mirrors is quite the right way, but it's in an echo chamber where everything echoes, and then you're trying to react to the echo and creating something else. And so we live in this world of effect that we're trying to deal with the effect and deal with the effect and deal with the effect, and we need to remember to come back to first cause. Wait, time out, stop. I'm going to come back that central, gentle place of love, of power within me, first cause. This is, when we get into the effects, they're effectively the false gods that we talked about in the Old Testament. I shall not have false gods before me. Not because God is so jealous, but because it doesn't work. If I'm putting something out other than the nature of the divine, that's the false god. And it keeps coming back at me. And the effects can be noisy, can't they? They can seem very real. You know, I remember when I rode the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. You know, you're going through there. How many people have ridden Pirates of the Caribbean? Yeah. So you're going through the ride, and there's these, you know, it's kind of dark and a little scary sometimes. They're supposed to be scary. And every once in a while you come up to a couple of places that it's like there's this projection of something that's scary, a person or a pirate or something like that with, you know, voices and stuff like that. But as you sail through it, you realize it's just vapor that something is projecting on. When you first approach it, it looks so real. It looks like you're going to, you know, this boat is going to go right into this person or this object, okay? But it's just vapor. It's just vapor. And as you go through it, you notice that. Our effects are simply vapor. Our effects are simply projections onto the screen of life. And dang it, they come from us. They come from us. There's nobody else to blame. So despite their appearance of reality, just like the vapor, they have no power. They have no power unless we invest our power in them, unless we say that has power over me. And then, not because they have power, but because, again, we have chosen to give them power. But they have no actual power. And so then we can, if you're like me, let them scare us. Right? We get scared sometimes. We get angry sometimes. We get upset sometimes by those. The way out is to always turn to that first cause. Emmett Fox, who is a wonderful New Thought writer, in his essay, The Golden Key, said, whatever your problem, think about God instead. Whatever your problem, think about God instead. So we're going to take some time to go within and turn our attention to that living spirit within. So if you'll take a breath with me, and what we're going to begin to do is we're going to begin with some ohms together until we let that die into the silence. And you'll know when you're complete with your ohms, and we'll just move into then a few minutes of silence. And Damien, I think I'm not going to do music for this. We're just going to move into the silence. And then I'll end that silence with ringing this particular bowl right here to bring us back. And so Om is out of the Hindu tradition. It's the oldest name of God. It's the oldest name of Spirit. And so we'll simply start that chant and let it go until it fades into the quietness within our own hearts. So if you'll join me. deep breath. Allow your attention, if it's drifted, to come back to the center here, to your body in the chair. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and be fully present. Every great spiritual master has taken time away. Jesus went off in the desert for 40 days. The Buddha sat under a Bodhi tree for 90 days. Muhammad went off into the cave. The prophets would go out to the desert. It's important to take time. It's important to take time away from our busy lives and our daily lives. And so this week I invite you to take time to focus on the one living Spirit. Perhaps take some time each day out of the busyness. Perhaps come to the silent retreat this weekend for the day and join with that. But take some time and allow yourself to just be open to Spirit, to be open to that first cause, so we can remember to allow that first cause to fill us and to fill then our lives more fully. So that's our only spiritual practice this week, just simply that we will take time to remember this truth. And if we already take time, perhaps stretch it a little bit more and a little bit more until we start seeing that God within. I want to close with a quote from Mechtilde Magdeburg. I, who am divine, am truly in you. I can never be sundered from you. However far we be parted, never can we be separated. I am in you, and you are in me. We could not be any closer. We two are fused into one, poured into a single mold. Thus unwearied, we shall remain forever. I invite you this week to honor that one that is already present in you, and to see that one everywhere else, in everything else. I in God, God in all. Let's move into prayer. In that one life, that all there is, that all in all, there is this light, there is this life, there is this love, there is this intelligence and this beauty. That infinite presence is all that there is. Nothing separate, nothing but that. There is nowhere that God is more or less present. God is all there is, everywhere, always. And because that is the truth of God, each of us that is the I of God, I am one of that, right here and right now. There is not a single aspect of me, not a single knit or hair on my head or pulse of my heart or breath that I take that is separate from the one. Nothing. I am one of the love. I am one of the life. I am one of the wisdom. I am one of the beauty right here, right now. Each of us. All of us. And so I speak my word that during this beautiful season where we celebrate so much light and so many great mystics coming to the light, that we allow our own inner mystic to come to this light, to remember the truth of who we are more deeply than ever before. The light is already on. The light is already on. And so I speak my word that each of us takes the time to simply be aware of that more fully and to live from and as and into that light. And for the great beauty that is created out of that process, I'm so grateful. And for that light itself, for the Spirit within us and all around us, I'm ever, ever so grateful. And so I release this word into that which we call the law, this thought, which is in alignment with first cause. The truth of love, the truth of beauty, the truth of wisdom, the truth of life within us. I release this word into law, that it manifests in our life more fully than ever before, knowing that it does because we have been in agreement and have spoken it as so. It is so, and so it is. Thank you. Bless you.